Welcome back. We're unpacking the latest published book with Peter Jon Mitchell, who is the co-author of this book called I Do: Why Marriage Still Matters. And this is a fantastic discussion because many of us are married, but we hear oftentimes that younger people are avoiding marriage, it's too much responsibility due to perhaps financial or societal pressures, things like this. So I'm really excited to unpack this. One thing I seem to recall, or I have observed rather, is that when one does get married and has children, it sort of instantly kind of matures somebody. Like you now have this responsibility immediately, and you feel this innately. Um, and so I have had discussions with peers where some suggest that delaying of marriage kind of stalls the maturation of a young person, say a young man who maybe feels a little aimless or listless, and if he doesn't have responsibilities of a family, then it's just going to delay his maturation. Did in your findings, was there anything that speaks to these notes?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I was reading the sports pages and I read this comment from a general manager of a hockey team, professional hockey team, saying that he was expecting big things of a young player because the player got married over the summer. And this GM's hockey sense actually taps into what economists have found, which is that when men get married, they do tend to quote unquote settle down. They tend to be more economically productive. Studies have shown that tend to engage in less risky behaviors, so less drinking, less risky behaviors. And it really does seem to focus men, and we see productivity economically go up. And we've certainly we see that again when men have children as well. We see an increase in economic productivity. So this is a sort of that sign of that maturing happening, and we've seen it across the economic spectrum. So there's some work in the U.S. that showed that men with perhaps less education but were married tend to outperform economically men who have slightly higher education but are not married. So there's
Wow.
something about that relationship with marriage in terms of productivity and kind of settling down. Now, what we've seen is that certainly as people are getting married at older ages, we're getting to those marriage and other adult life markers at older ages. The other thing that we should acknowledge too, in terms of the decline of marriage that plays into this, is that marriage is not declining equally among the social economic spheres. So what we've seen over the last number of decades, both in North America, and we've seen some evidence of this in the UK as well, is that those that have more education, a little bit better off economically, tend to get married and stay married. Where we see the majority of the decline of marriage has been folks that are less educated or are struggling financially, and so they miss out on some of the benefits of marriage, some of the social and economic benefits to having two earners, stable family life. Um, and certainly missing out on some of the social capital that comes from those relationships as well. And that's something that we should be concerned about. And part of that is because the nature of how we think about marriage is changing. It used to be when my parents were starting out, they would get married young, they would get jobs, perhaps buy a house in a few years.
Right.
Marriage was this foundational building block. What we've seen now is that marriage is now more of a capstone. It's when you get your life together, when you get things together, then you marry. Perhaps you get the job, you get financially stable, maybe
Right.
even a house, and then you start thinking about getting married. And I even saw this recently. There was a diamond commercial that came out this fall that showed this curious couple saying, I gotta be the best version of myself before I enter marriage. This is a completely different understanding of marriage than we saw even just 30 or 40 years ago, when we saw diamond commercials being advertised in 17 magazine to kids that are sort of in their 15 years and moving to their 20s, when we were
Wow.
advertising diamond kids came. So we've certainly seen a large shift in how we think about marriage, and that's certainly been part of that trend line towards getting married at older ages.
Now, how does divorce factor in to marriage? And what I mean by that is, we're seeing the young like with the children who were the products of a divorce, I guess you could say. They were, their parents divorced, and now they're getting married. How has that played into the attitudes and outlooks towards marriage, perhaps causing some of those to delay that kind of decision out of not wanting to repeat experience?
So I think we can see it have sort of two effects of experiencing parental divorce. Either it's going to make somebody very cautious about entering a marriage of themselves, or it's going to give them sort of renewed challenge to enter a marriage and to try to make it work. And certainly we're very cognizant of that in writing this book. We had someone that looked at the book for us and reviewed the book and said that they were going to give it to their own daughter who was quite skeptical of marriage because of a painful divorce that this person had
Mm.
gone through, and it really had been failed by others and people in her community in supporting her through a very difficult and abusive marriage. And so it's really important to acknowledge that personal experience plays a significant role in how we understand and believe
Okay, I'm
about
going to
marriage.
pause you
But
there, and we're going to be right back in just a moment.
okay.
Thank you.